Hey everyone, it's Anthony here. Normally we don't do this, but I wanted to offer a content warning before this particular episode. Roy Harper as a character has been through quite a bit, whether it's abandonment issues, drug addiction, suicidality, and the loss of a child. And this episode, for better or worse, is a lot heavier and much more hard-hitting than most of our previous material. So if any of those topics are of concern to you, or they make you uncomfortable, or they trigger you in any way, there is no shame in skipping that one. You can please feel free to check out some of our lighter episodes. I would suggest the Deadpool one, maybe, if you want to laugh. But this one is very emotional and very heavy. So I just wanted to give you all a heads up before you listen to this one, that this one was the most difficult episode to record that we've ever done. And I hope that if you manage to make it through, you take some positive things away from it. But in case, as I said, if it makes you uncomfortable, please feel free to skip that episode and come back for the next one. We'll be back to more joking and pop culture references, I'm sure, next time around. So with that being said, here's our typical intro.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
You are here. You are physically present.
Or am I?
No,
Yeah.
you're here.
Yeah, I'm definitely here.
I can see you.
Yep.
I can touch you.
Yep.
Yeah, because I've recorded now 3 episodes, or at least I've done 3 recordings without you. The bridge material for the New York Comic Con interviews, plus our big crossover.
Yeah. I was really disappointed that I missed that. That was not intentional, everyone. To be blunt, sometimes life gets in the way. In this case, I actually got a really big promotion. The problem is, with great power comes great responsibility, and I had to do some extra work.
With great power comes great responsibility and no downtime.
Yeah, that's true. It's very difficult running a whole inpatient psychiatric hospital.
Yeah, not just a section. You are running the whole hospital.
Yep.
Wow.
Hey. As long as it's not Arkham.
No, it is not Arkham. It is not Arkham at all. So, gosh, I feel like I should clue you in on things that have happened in the interim, but I don't know what else to say. I mean, we had the 2 interviews, the 2 interview episodes of New York Comic Con, and they kind of blew up a bit and very well received. And it was always a pleasure to see retweets and likes from the creators that were referenced in the tweets. Gail Simone retweeted us, our Jeremy Whitley and Erica Schultz, and Cullen Bunn was a fan. And then unfortunately, Chris Claremont is on Instagram, but he's not on Twitter. So I tagged him in the one Twitter or the one Instagram video, but he didn't seem to like it, or I don't know who's running his account. I don't think it's him personally.
Okay.
But
I will say it's unique to be on the listening side, because I do listen to a lot of podcasts, but to listen to your own podcast and not be on it, that's a fascinating feeling.
Yeah, I can imagine it is. But you're on this one, and you are here, and we are going to be talking Roy Harper. Our patron Ariel requested him. So hats off to Ariel. Hats off to Roy Harper. Again, Led Zeppelin reference. I just feel like I'm obligated to throw that in there. So Roy Harper was created by Mort Weisinger and George Papp in More Fun Comics, number 73, November 1941. And yes, that's the actual title, More Fun Comics. I I guess, was there like a fun comics and then
maybe even less fun comics? I mean, do they go even more extreme? This is the most fun you could have comics?
I don't know. This was the 40s and they were printing comics left and right and literally everyone was buying them. So, but he was originally known as Speedy and he was the sidekick to Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow. So he was raised by Brave Bow, a Navajo medicine chief after his father died. And then Brave Bow was dying and he was adopted by Green Arrow and became Oliver's sidekick. So he was a member of the original Teen Titans, not to be confused with the cartoon version that we all know and is on Cartoon Network 23 hours a day. And he dated Donna Troy, Wonder Girl, for a while before they broke up. And then I think, we talk about certain characters are just intrinsically linked with one particular story, much like we talk when we did the Hank Pym episode, and Hank Pym is forever linked with the Slap. Roy Harper, if you ask, to the extent that anyone knows anything about Roy Harper, he was addicted to heroin.
Yep.
This was the famous story, Snowbirds Don't Fly. It was the fall of 1971. And this was the Dennis O'Neil, Neil Adams run on the character. And this was a very controversial story because it ran without the seal of the Comics Code Authority, which at the time didn't want any portrayal of drugs at all. Even a bad one, even one that said drugs are bad. And they said, don't care, no drugs whatsoever. And a couple of months prior to that, Spider-Man had done a storyline in which he was dealing with some drug dealers. And I think there was a guy who got high and then walked off of a roof.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, you can't run this with the seal of the Comics Code Authority. And Stan Lee said, okay,
right.
Then we're just going to take the seal off the cover, run it, and then we'll go right back to the code seal. And so DC saw that and said, I guess we can do that too. And then shortly after this, Marvel, DC, and I guess Archie was the only other really big comic publisher at the time. They all got together and said, okay, let's revamp the code because we're kind of limiting the stories we can tell because we want to be able to show the negative impacts of drugs without being hamstrung that any reference to drugs is bad. Like it was a complete prohibition on anything. So they relaxed the code a bit. And that's really when you start to see a maturity in the stories. But in any case, Roy gets addicted to heroin and sells some of Ollie's equipment for drug money. And Ollie gets attacked with his own arrows. And eventually he finds Roy and he thinks, oh, okay, Roy is undercover with these junkies to try and bust up this. No. And so that the very famous cover of that is a Green Lantern and Green Arrow looking at Ollie, who's got the spoon and the needle. And
you mean Roy? Roy.
Roy. Roy has the spoon and everything. And Ollie's shocked expression and the tag is, my ward is a junkie. And so Ollie kicks him out. He punches him in the face and says, I want nothing to do with you, because that's how you handle drug addiction in 1971, folks. A punch to the face and abandonment.
And in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and decades to come, because that's a common reaction, unfortunately.
Sad to say, sad but true. So he gets taken care of by Black Canary until he gets clean. So then he, long story short, he falls in love with the villain Cheshire, and they have a daughter that he doesn't know about until much, much later, that she sort of lords over him. His daughter's name is Lian. And then he rejoins the Titans, and then he adopts the name Arsenal. We're into the early 80s at this point. So he's no longer Speedy. Now he's Arsenal because he's using a wide variety of weaponry. Hey, I think it's a better name than Speedy.
Yeah. It's interesting because I always thought Casey Jones was the first character that would use random things, but Roy did a pretty good job too.
Yeah, Roy was deadly with pretty much anything. So after the Titans broke up, he led a group called the Outsiders for a while. Then he joins the Justice League under the name Red Arrow because he's trying to maintain his secret identity, as though no one will understand that the guy who looks like Green Arrow's sidekick grown up is really good with a bow and arrow and calls himself Red Arrow. Wonder who that could be. In any case, so he's in the Justice League until the villain Prometheus cuts his arm off and the electrocutioner blows up Star City, killing his daughter. So with a cybernetic arm that's rebuilt by Cyborg, he goes to the prison and kills the electrocutioner. He just says, nope, you killed my daughter. You're done.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was a great cathartic release, and he lived his life, and everyone was all happy about it. And
Nope. He had a heroin relapse.
that actually sounds way more realistic than you would think.
Oh, I'm sure it does. It absolutely does. When I read about everything that happened to him, I go, yeah, okay, that's legit. That's legit. Okay, yeah, he kills the guy who killed his daughter and then gets re-addicted to heroin. Okay, I can see that. That tracks. So he gets clean again. And then in the New 52, the DC reinvention of the universe, Lian is no longer a thing and his arm is intact. And now he's good friends with Jason Todd. Now he's merely an alcoholic instead of a recovering drug addict. And he's a member of the Outlaws. And then he dies in a rehab center and he gets killed by Wally West.
Man, there is, once again, some reality to this in that even amongst those who have had concerns with substance use, they will discriminate amongst each other. In other words, I'm just an alcoholic. I'm not one of those, those meth heads or the heroin guys. I'm not them. Meanwhile, the others are saying, well, hey, I know that if I go through withdrawal, it's horrible, but at least I'm not going to die like those alkies. It's really incredible how people really start to pigeonhole themselves, even amongst what's considered a shunned group.
Yeah. So then in Rebirth, which is the reinvention of the DC universe, his past of being Speedy and his drug addiction get restored. So now Lian is dead again, and he was addicted to heroin, and he was Speedy, and they retcon the retcon so that it's in broad strokes back to the original version of his origin.
Right.
DC needs to just stick with this stuff. And I feel like every time we do a DC hero, it's always like, well, this is what they were originally like. And then this is what they were like in New 52. And then when they go back to Rebirth and ignore the New 52, this is what happens.
Yeah, it gets a little drastic. I'll admit that. But is it really that much different than incursions in Marvel or other situations where people are meeting alternatives of themselves? And I don't
Marvel
know.
only, I mean, the not for nothing, I'm not going to get into a big Marvel versus DC thing, but Marvel had 616 and the Ultimate. Yeah, they had a couple of the occasional stories like the Old Man Logan and the occasional story, but by and large, it was 616 and Ultimate. And that was it. And then Ultimate was its own thing for 15, 20 years. And then Secret Wars happened, and then they merged them. And now there's only a handful of Ultimate characters left, although apparently now the Ultimate Universe is still a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But because I guess they didn't want to give up on it that much. But
and 2099 and Marvel Zombies. But let's not get into that.
Okay, I forgot about 2099.
Okay.
Well, that's not an alternate universe as much as it is just...
No, but it's an opportunity to take a different spin because it's usually not the same characters, but still under the same moniker for some reason. Marketing. I don't know. I you know what? We can leave that for like an official debate at some point that becomes its own super show. So let's leave that alone.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. So let's move on to the issues. So let's go because I feel like as much as the drug thing is the famous issue, he didn't start with that. So let's back it up and let's do it chronologically. And let's start with abandonment and father issues. So his birth father died, Roy Sr., and then I think when he was 3, so he gets taken in by Brave Bow, and he's raised basically among the Navajo. And this is a very interesting thing because he's too white for the Navajo and too Navajo for the other white people. But he's very proud of his upbringing, and he feels a very close kinship with Brave Bow and the Navajo people. And then Brave Bow dies of cancer, and then Ollie, so now he's with Ollie until Ollie abandons him to go off across country with Black Canary and Green Lantern. So that leads to the drug use, which we'll get to, but I want to first talk about the abandonment and the father issues, that he's had 3 father figures, and Brave Bow is the only one that he holds in any real high esteem. So that definitely plays a role in his mentality as an adult.
Oh, absolutely. Unless we're talking about someone that, through circumstances beyond their control, grow up addicted to something, you're not going to see that until much later. But everything is shaped by who you end up interacting with at a young age. So, true, it wasn't his biological father, but that's okay. There are many people in the world, believe it or not, because of personal choices by the parental figures, don't even know whether or not they were adopted or they're not truly a biological father and they're actually a different family member, things like that. And for the most part, as long as it wasn't done out of m- malice, it doesn't matter. Children are able to identify who the positive adults are in their life fairly quickly. Your son right now is able to tell who you are compared to any other male in the world. They may still reach out to other adults, but it's not going to be the same.
And that may also be why he's upset right now, because I'm not there to help my wife do bedtime because I'm recording and it's just her and we have a little thing we do. So at bedtime.
Right. And that's a great transition, because the next thing I was going to say is you end up developing certain characteristics and routines because you end up mirroring what you see in the adults around you, especially if it's someone that's also mutually interested in you. It's very natural for people to want to be around children. They're kind of programmed that way. They're little meat puppet robots. I'm kidding, I'm exaggerating, but the point is they process in a way that we still don't quite understand, but we know that they're downloading all of this information constantly, be it your mannerisms, be it what you consider to be valuable and important with your time. All of those things get integrated. And as a young child, you get to experiment. You get to test out on the world every day what quote unquote works and what doesn't. So for someone like Roy, he gets to see a strong leader in an environment that they didn't have a choice but to make sure they knew how to survive in a world that, quite frankly, doesn't really want them around or isolates them in general. So he got to see that firsthand. And he got to see how someone was able to handle it with the type of strength, grace, and maturity that didn't lead to constant conflict. So that's all wonderful. Even though he also got exposed, as you said, to other people under different circumstances that made it very clear that you're not like the rest of us. But thankfully, he's allowed to experience what Brave Bow experiences on a regular basis and recognize that it's okay to be a little bit different, because you can still find other people that are considered a little bit different and create your own inner circle, no matter what. So I'm grateful that he had that opportunity to develop that well. And I'll even say his experience with death, it allowed him to recognize that he may not be what we would consider to be a quote unquote man yet, but he knows that he's on the way to being a positive person in a society that he cares about. And getting exposed to someone like Oliver, who clearly has his own goals, agendas, and still wants to be a positive influence in the world, continues along that track. You can have what for some people would be a significant traumatic loss and not miss a beat if you have enough support around you. There's no guarantees of that, but still pretty valuable. That's where I'm not going to automatically put blame on Oliver, because everybody has to make major choices in life. But I don't think he recognized just how vital that finishing part was for Speedy's maturity. I'm not saying that he had to coddle him. I'm not saying that he had to be explicit, but I think there was a misunderstanding. The way Oliver seemed to be interpreting it was, hey man, it's clear you got some really good skills. I'm glad that you learned from me. I'm glad you had someone before me that put you along this path. You're good to go, right? Or in Jersey, like, you good? You good. And
you saw that too going over here? Yeah. Everything is, you good? You good.
So he basically thought, that's it. Work's done. Time to move forward. Everybody has their own pace, though. And ironically, Speedy needed a little bit more time. And that's not an insult to Roy. It's just an observation that if you need continued mentorship, we all need continued mentorship, but if you need it at a level that you're not receiving it, then it leaves the opportunity for you to falter. And that can happen in any number of ways. But I think it's fair to say that Speedy can be a little hot-headed. He can clash with people. He and Oliver didn't always see eye to eye on everything. And we've had numerous episodes where we talk about that father-son relationship. But it had gotten to a point where it wasn't father-son. Not that it was ever really father-son, but the point is it was always dominant to subordinate. And there was no need for insubordination because Oliver's kind of a free spirit on his own. So even if he had that type of backlash, for the most part, he'd be like, you know what? You could do your own thing. It's kind of the opposite spectrum as what we've talked about with Batman and his wards, where he always has such a tight rein on everybody and they end up acting out because they feel like there's no other way that they could show themselves. Oliver's actually very loose. And in this case, someone like Speedy's like, can you tighten it up just a little bit? And he's like,
needed a little bit more firmer hand.
Exactly. And he's like, nah, it's all right. Like I said, you good? You good. All right. Yeah, we're good. All right, let's go. And so that type of drop in guidance can really mess someone up if you're not careful.
And that is precisely what led to the drug use, because he fell in with the wrong group of people and he was looking for that connection and they offered it to him. It came at a price. And much as Hank, like I said earlier, much as Hank Pym has come to be defined in universe and out of universe by the slap, we discussed that in that episode, Roy has come to be defined in universe and out by the heroin. And he is, at least in a lot of the stories that I read, and a lot of the good stories, I'll put it that way, the realistic stories, he's constantly dealing with the after effects of the addiction, both physically, spiritually, socially, and he's constantly afraid of a relapse. And this is pre-Lian's death. He's still afraid. And even once Lian is born, he's very concerned that he's going to relapse because he wants to be a good father. And that's something that I think sort of, I don't want to say separates him from a lot of comic book heroes, but we don't see, I'll put it this way, single parents in comics don't tend to be very positive, or they don't tend to be very good parents by and large. Roy was an exception to that. Roy was a very loving father to Lian, and he was a very doting and loving dad and always wanted to provide a good example. And that's what scared him so much about the heroin, was that he had this demon in his past and he was always afraid that it was going to show up again. And that really weighs on people.
All right. I'm going to do first a little basic background science with this. If you already know this stuff, feel free to kind of space out. I get it. But I want to make sure, because we have an opportunity to reach an audience that may not know some of this stuff. Heroin is a synthetic opiate. It's something that acts on opioid receptors. What does that mean? Well, there are certain signals that our brain has to receive in order to recognize things like pain. And if you put certain chemicals on those receptors, you can just totally overload them and get the type of release of dopamine, which is quote unquote the pleasure chemical, and feel way different than you would otherwise. So at the proper doses with certain medications, that means that you won't have the same experience of severe pain. That's the point in the hospital of temporary morphine, of other pain medications. They're not saying you don't have pain. They're saying you're in such a state that you're not really going to care that much about it. One little problem, and this is true for all addictions, once that rush of dopamine hits, you want to recreate that as much as possible, as often as possible, and as intense as possible. One little problem. Our nervous system acclimates to that. It gets desensitized. It's going to take more of that substance to produce the same effect. That's referred to as tolerance. The other problem is your body gets to a point, especially when it comes to these opioid receptors, that it can't function properly without that extra boost. And therefore, when you don't have it, it's not just that you don't get the same effect, you actually feel 10 times worse. So you need to flood your your opioid receptors to get that release of dopamine. The fact that you need it now physiologically, that's called dependence. When you have those two physical events happening, then that's classically what we refer to as physical addiction. So, do all substances do this? Not really. Are all substances as available readily as things like heroin? Or let's be honest, things in your medicine cabinet. Things that you can easily get from a doctor if you complain about the right pain. Big deal. Because it's flooded our society with enough that you can get it without what the stereotype of the 70s or 60s was of going to your local dealer or whatnot. That stuff still happens, but it's not even necessary anymore. So, in all honesty, this is a little outdated, not because it's talking about heroin, it's because it's not as complicated as it seems. Yes, they use the tropes of people that clearly are physically not looking well and having problems functioning. It could just as easily be your next door neighbor. It could just as easily be your own family. And you wouldn't even...
It could be my aunt and uncle. May they both rest in peace.
I wasn't even going to go there.
No, I was. I knew it. When we were talking about this, I said, I'm absolutely bringing this up because my uncle got addicted. He was in, I think he had surgery or he was in an accident or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it starts. And then he got addicted. He started using the painkillers. And then the painkillers weren't enough. And then my aunt got addicted. And now neither of them are alive.
Right.
And I know for an absolute fact that that story is not uncommon.
Right. And unfortunately, because I know I talked about why we would take them in the first place to eliminate the experience of pain. Unfortunately, the actual physical effects don't end there. They affect many different systems in your body. It affects your digestive system. So you can get really constipated while you're taking them. And when you stop, and if you're addicted, then you're going to have things coming out of everywhere. I'm trying to clean it up here. You're also going to notice when you see someone like this, while they're taking it, you may notice they have pinpoint pupils. And when they stop, it looks like their eyes are a sea of black and they're almost like wearing special contacts to get that effect. You might notice that when they're using, their skin looks okay. You don't even think about it. But then when they stop, all of a sudden, it looks like they've just run a marathon twice and they can't stop sweating. And they talk about how cold they are, start shivering. And all of this together means that you feel like you have the worst flu and GI bug that you've ever had when you're going through withdrawal. So you mentioned the fear of relapse. Once you get past that point, you don't ever want to go through any of these experiences again. They're that bad. As a matter of fact, people wonder, well, if you just want to get clean, why don't you just do it? Like, well, anybody here, have you ever been laid up in bed with something that was going through your system where you couldn't hold food down or even like take a drink of something without either it coming up or going down and not being able to function? If you've gone through that, now imagine you have no control whatsoever, and it's a guarantee that you're going to experience that for hours, if not days. You'd want to avoid that as much as possible. So you keep using. So it's not just the idea that you have a psychological addiction with so many other things that we've come to know are addictions. They really are. I'm not downplaying that. But when you add that physical component, it's understandable why people react that way and why they get terrified of the idea of that middle ground, either coming off of it or once they're off of it, ever going back. I can't pretend and say that I've experienced that. I can't say that I know exactly what that's like, but I've seen at this point hundreds of patients go through it. And I want to make sure that we recognize that we don't need to stigmatize these people and make it sound like they're subhuman, because I do see that as well. And I see the frustrations for everybody that has to deal with this from a family standpoint, from a caregiver standpoint, from a professional standpoint. And it's a shame that sometimes we let our baser instincts take over in the moment where somebody really needs us. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to wish that this never happened to this person, but it's not okay to think that they're not worth it. And I'm saying that for myself as much as anybody, because I know I've had those feelings too. So to get back to the character himself, you see that splash, that title cover, all that. Why was that so powerful? Because the idea was you were an adult and you had someone that you considered your responsibility, and they made choices that were negative in their life. Take the drug part or the addiction part out of it. I know we've talked about this before. It's a very fine line between saying, this is all my fault that you ended up this way, and this is all your fault and I take no responsibility. There's a balance there. So in a situation like this, could it have been prevented? I don't know. I'm not going to automatically say that. But I'm also not going to condemn the idea that Oliver telling him he needed to go his own way was a wrong choice. Because in general, when people end up overdosing, and I forgot the most important thing, when you're using this stuff, the biggest risk is that it stops your breathing. And there are a few very powerful versions like fentanyl that happen very quickly. They don't usually happen in an alleyway or in the middle of the road. They happen in the comfort of someone's home. They happen in the den of a friend that was just trying to help them take the edge off. And I'm talking about something that's called enabling. And what that means is you mean well for the person and you're trying to provide the basic support that they deserve as a human being. But at the same time, giving that to someone who has no interest or no motivation at the time to deal with their addiction can often backfire. I would never advocate punching someone in the face or telling or using expletives or shouting at them or anything like that. But I do recommend that you can give that person a survival kit. You can give them contact information. You can let them know that you'll always be there to support them emotionally, but also let them know that they can't use here. Because sometimes that transition to let them know that while you're willing to offer the support, it has to be support in a positive way, in a safe space, without that last enabling piece. I don't hesitate to say that that's the hardest thing for anyone that cares about a person to do.
And when you were talking earlier about where it happens, my aunt died on her couch. She shot up, fell asleep, and never woke up. And I will never forget that phone call that my father took. So that's, and then maybe about a year and a half later, we got the call about my uncle that he died too. So now I have a cousin who I think at this point is 18. And I don't know where he is. I don't know what happened to him. God only knows what he saw because he was a kid when all this was going on. And I fear for him, and I worry about him, and I think about him often. And that's the real impact of what this stuff does to you.
Yeah.
Not even once. Not for me. Nope. I will try. I've tried stuff, and I know, Doc, you've said on the show, say no to most drugs.
Yeah.
Heroin is one of them.
Right.
Not even once.
Right. I totally understand that. And there is a delicate balance in healthcare itself, because we know that there are people that have chronic pain problems, and there are ways to help them. And pain medication does have its place, but more and more we're learning that place is usually shorter than you think at an amount less than you think. After surgery, totally fine. Days and like months and all that after a surgery, not so much.
Nope.
The second that you say you have chronic pain, you need to have a discussion with your doctor about what the alternatives are, because just saying, here's your pain medication, it isn't always the best way to go. I don't want to speak in absolutes about this because every case is unique, and I recognize that. But at the same time, the literature is getting robust about how we hit it a little too heavy, a lot longer than we should have, and we're really trying to dial it back.
The Sackler family.
Oh, man. All right.
I just gotta say
you put that out there. Okay. My main point is also, I don't want people, for example, that are on pain medication that have crippling medical conditions saying, well, listen to this doctor. He's an idiot. He's telling everyone that I should just go through withdrawal. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you have a responsible prescriber and there's a rationale as to what you're on, why you're on it, and it's not causing impairments in your life, then so be it. But also recognize that that's a very fine line to walk. And if you're not, be honest with yourself, if you're not mature enough to address the risks on an ongoing basis and have other people outside of yourself check on that to make sure that it's not getting out of hand, then you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think we've kind of railed on the drugs and the addiction for a while, and which is fair. And I do think that, at least for a character like Roy, it's so linked to who he is, both externally and in universe as well. But the last thing I want to discuss, and I mentioned this earlier, is the parental regret. He was a great father to Lian, but he wasn't there when she died, and he has nightmares about it. And losing a child is something that I can't even begin to imagine. As a new father, just reading about this and reading about everything that he had gone through, it terrified me.
Yeah. I know we touched on this a little bit with the multiple man episode, with the child getting reabsorbed into him, which of course is fantastical and it's different. I know that. But still, there's a certain progression in life that's supposed to happen. You get a little older, you have children, your children continue to grow and hopefully do things that you would want them to do and have great lives. The old stereotype, making sure that the next generation is a little bit better than yours, all of that. And at some point, that also means that you're going to have to phase out and die. That's the natural progression that people in general think of. So anything that is a disturbance to that progression is something that our human nature doesn't always deal with as well. And I think actually you would figure as we have become more sophisticated in what we understand with psychology and emotions as a whole, you would think it's getting better. I would posit that in some ways it's getting worse. What do I mean by that? Generations ago, how many kids would you have? A lot. But why was that? Because there's a real practical nature to it. We didn't live as long. Things were a lot harsher. And if you didn't do your darndest to try and keep a generation going, you knew that some of them were gonna not make it. That was just the reality of things, and you did what you could and you just kept going forward. Nowadays, we've gotten to the point where, although the US is not as good as the rest of the world, sorry to say, but survival rates are fantastic. We keep children alive that would have never been able to survive.
Yeah, infant mortality in the United States is a whole other socioeconomic and cultural discussion that we don't have the time and bandwidth for.
I'm aware, but I'm just saying the expectations now are much different. If you can come out of the womb, then you can have your life. Anything that disturbs that now is a tragedy. And I'm not even saying that in the anthropological way that it sounds. It's something that actually touches me very deeply. And that's something that I'll admit I have difficulty with when it comes to parents that are dealing with that type of grief of a loss, be it a child that dies from cancer, be it stillborn, or anything, even when it's quote unquote elective. I know that's a touchy subject with a lot of people, but the point is there's still a lot of grief and loss there. All of it says that this is not the way the world should be. It's the ultimate injustice. And in this case, we have someone who considers himself to be a hero, someone who's supposed to save people. Now, everything in that story arc indicates there's nothing he, quote unquote, could have done. I mean, all it means is if he were right there next to her, he would have been blown up too. That's out of his control, which makes it even worse. Because at least for many people, and I suspect someone who puts as much effort and energy into things as Roy does, if he had the opportunity to try, he would have had a grief from failure for what he did and didn't work, because he could at least carry it forward and keep iterating and keep doing things and keep trying. But in this case, it was all ripped from him. He had nothing. He can't compare it to anything. So now it's a void. It's just done. It's something that, how do you even talk to someone else about it? I mean, he could talk to other people that lost people in the blast, but it's not as if they knew her. He can't have that type of personal conversation about that part. Everything that she was and was supposed to be only survives through him. So now he's at a point where he has two generations running through his mind. And he's going to have to do that for the rest of his life. And yes, he can have, in theory, another child. But there's no such thing as substitution for that. I'm dropping it. I can't.
That's okay. It's a heavy topic. And it was difficult for me to, like I said, read some of this stuff as a new father, and to think about my son, who is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And,
yeah.
I just, every day I come home and I see him, and he gives me the biggest smile. And to envision any universe in which I don't get to see that smile ever again is, it's not a world I want to live in. And so I get it that Roy gets haunted by this stuff. And I don't blame him at all for being angry at Mina, who's supposed to be watching him. I don't blame him for killing the electrocutioner. I don't. And I can even understand the relapse, because that was his only getaway. That was his only method of escaping the hell that he was in. Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I'm not gonna give names because I've been consistent in making sure I don't do that. But I know you were there for one of the most difficult things I've ever experienced in my life, and it wasn't even like directly with me. It was one of my sisters, and you know.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was there, man.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think now is as good a time as any to take a break. While we play some plugs for shows that are hopefully way less depressing or than this one, and we'll be back shortly, and we'll get into treatment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey, Ray.
Yes, Connor?
What's black and white and red all over?
A newspaper?
Not even close.
Sunburnt zebra?
What are you doing, Ray? Not even close.
Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. A weekly podcast coming to you from the High Priest of Khonshu. Available on all good podcast catchers.
Hi, this is Jimmy from the podcast Talk Me Into, the show where my co-hosts Dan, Jeff, and I talk each other, and maybe even you, into liking what we like. Here's a little taste of our show.
I need another episode.
Whoa! My God, I was not expecting this.
It claps too.
It does. It do clap. It's a proper bop.
Jeff and Jimmy, did I talk you into liking
Spoilers.
No.
If you feel so inclined, you can listen to our show every Tuesday. Find us in every podcasting app and follow us on Twitter at TalkMeInto.
Hello, I'm Chris Claremont. You're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So this is going to be another one of those instances where we're going to merge the in-universe and out-of-universe treatment, largely because Speedy as a character and the issues that he is dealing with are not superhuman. I take away the whole right arm cybernetic thing.
Right.
But, I mean, abandonment and father issues, drug use, loss of a child, none of this is fantastical. This is all very real. So what would you say to Roy Harper or anyone who is dealing with this unfortunate conflict, combination of issues?
Yeah. I go back a bit to the classical biopsychosocial model of how psychiatrists process a case. So the biological. In this case, the biggest piece is the addiction itself, the old term chemical dependence, It's actually fairly straightforward, where there are a few ways you can deal with the fact that your body needs to be flooded with opiates to make sure the receptors have something to fill them all the time. From a safety standpoint, if there's someone that overdoses, or it's not even an overdose, the point is you take something and you have the problem where you stop breathing, you can give something for that. Okay? It's one of the rare times I'll actually use a brand name because everybody has to know it. And that's Narcan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Also known as naloxone. That literally takes the opioid receptors and says, I'm separating you from whatever's attached to you. It literally rips it off. Yes, that is as bad as it sounds, because you're saying to yourself, well, wait a minute, didn't you say that when the receptors are empty, your body goes all haywire and all? Yes, Yes, you are instantly creating the person's worst withdrawal when you do that. But some people may have such a high use level that they get hit with this stuff more than once. And you would think it's a complicated thing where you need to put IVs and stuff, and it can be that way. But now we actually have a nasal spray for it. You can save someone's life with this stuff if you learn how to use it. Nationwide, you can get trained in this. You do not have to be a professional at all. You can keep it in your house. You can keep it in your car. As a matter of fact, most first responders at this point are trained on how to use it. And countless lives are going to be saved now and in the future because of this. So that's the first thing, making sure that physically someone is doing okay. There's medical treatments for this. And I know this is another point that can be a bad sticking point because it has such a stigma associated with it, where you recognize, once again, that because of this physiological dependence on this stuff, you don't want the person to just automatically go through horrible withdrawal where they can't seem to tolerate it and can't function, that you can do a physical substitution. Long-acting medications such as methadone, and there are clinics specifically for this. The person ends up going on a daily basis, receiving one dose of a medication, no different than someone that is on a blood pressure medication and has to take it once a day. And they're able to go to work, they're able to be with their families, they're able to function on a day-to-day basis. And I get that the ideal is never have to use anything ever again. I understand that. But when you're dealing with a lot more serious consequences than whether or not we're going to hit the ultimate ideal in the world when we're clearly not at that point, in my opinion, you take what you can get. In addition to that, a variation of that is something that I like to call the partially open door, because methadone is a pure substitution. It is another opiate like the other opiates. It's just very long acting, so it allows for a social acceptance. Buprenorphine is something that acts a little weird. When it's around other opiates, it'll rip them off, those opioid receptors. When there's nothing else around, it can act like an opiate and actually stay on the receptors itself. It's kind of like the middleman. And I know nobody really likes the middleman in life, but once again, if it allows for overall functioning without all of the negative consequences associated with substance use disorders, then that may be a decent trade-off. So that's all the biological stuff. Okay. The psychological stuff, as you already, Tony, or Anthony, I should say. Yeah, I snuck that in. I always called him Tony. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The psychological part, for many times when it comes to addiction, it's not just the exposure to the substance. Because you can think about it. I'm sure many people in their lives have been exposed to lots of different potential things they could have used or may have even used and not had the exact same effect where they immediately had to go through this pathway of their downfall. Why is that? Why is it that sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't? Well, because there are many other factors going on in that person's life that make them either receptive or not receptive to just the idea that they need that form of immediate escape. So, in other words, maybe having some sort of traumatic event in your life might lead to wanting to have a different mindset. Maybe having a comorbid depression or other mental health concern may more likely lead to you wanting to find something just to not have to deal with it. There's so many other factors. And yes, I know I talked heavily about the biological piece to set all of this up, but that other piece, that emotional piece, without it, you're not going to get anywhere. And so that's why we've developed what's called motivational interviewing. And the idea is you need to find that kernel of truth for that person as to what is going to allow them to move forward and not want to continue in the path that they're going. It may be something external. In this case, I have a kid that I got to take care of. It may be internal. I used to be a fantastic salesman, and I know that I'm not on my game if I'm doing this stuff. Fair enough. Whatever it is, The job is not to do the type of shaming that we all think about when it comes to addiction.
You have to find the why.
Right. And you keep going with that. You don't ask them, well, how come you pissed positive 2 weeks ago after we had such a great talk? Man, come on. Don't you care about this? No. It's, it's interesting. I know that you had that positive test, and I just want to know, how many times did you use? Did you use less than the last time you relapsed? Because that would be a good step, that'd be a good step forward. Just those slight tweaks to let them know that we realize you're a person and that you're going to have these ups and downs like anybody else does. And it just so happens that it's with substance use. Make it humanizing, make it realistic, and make it actionable so that the person doesn't have to think that they have to be this automaton robot that is absolutely perfect in any way. And any deviation from that indicates instant failure. And therefore, if you're going to fail instantly, then you might as well go all out, balls to the wall, and go back to the way things were. Because that's the piece that a lot of times we see when people almost get, I hate to say it this way, almost like a cult-like nature with it, where it's fascinating. You want to know the hardest conversation you can have with someone who's had a substance use disorder? It's with someone else that has had a substance use disorder and is militant about it. Because they basically say, I've done it, why can't you? And I think that's turned off more people than it has turned on. And there's a lot of evidence to support that. So that's why the technique I'm talking about is so important. You do not want to just hammer these people over and over and over again. It doesn't do anything other than decrease self-esteem and increase likelihood of, continued use. So I'm saying this not just for general audience. I'm saying this for healthcare professionals. We do this worse than anybody if we're not conscious of it. So if we do have anybody on that level that's listening to this, I'm not saying that you're doing a bad job. I'm saying there are much better ways than what you're used to if you're willing to learn it. So that's the psychological piece. The social piece, I think we already mentioned. You want to make sure you create as positive an environment as you can. There's some controversy about things like quote unquote halfway houses or supportive housing, depending on the circumstances. I think that's more unique to each location and specific nature, as opposed to saying halfway houses are good or halfway houses are bad. In other words, if you have a supportive environment that is continuing with the positive goal of a person maintaining a sober lifestyle that is long-lasting and is going to allow for continued function, great. If you have a place that's full of people that are trying to make sure that they don't go to jail, but want to trade war stories and actually now have a better supplier because of the type of people that they're hanging around in the same environment, that's horrible. So I don't want to create blanket statements. This is the type of thing that's gone on in our field for generations. So I don't think we're ever going to get the perfect answer for this. To tie all of that up, this is a man that had things happen to him before the substance use and has had things happen to him after the substance use. These are not in a vacuum. I'm not going to ignore a father's grief. I'm not going to ignore a teenager's outcry. I can't ignore the fact that both of these things may happen simultaneously. It used to be called MICA, mentally ill, chemically addicted. And there used to be specified units if someone needed inpatient treatment for that. Now they're called dual diagnosis units. Same purpose. You get to handle both of those situations in a supportive environment, safe with professionals that will allow you to have an individualized game plan for what's going to work for you in the long run. And I'm saying that biasedly, I admit, because that's part of what my current services are. We are not officially, let me make this clear, we're not a rehab, we're not a detox unit or anything like that, but we actually have peer support people. We have people that encourage, they've been professionally trained, but they've walked the path. They know what's going on. We can encourage AA and NA. We can also talk about things that have nothing to do with substance use. Grief counseling for someone that's lost family members, even if it's not exactly the same as losing a small child or even an older child. All of these things together are what help the person, not just one. I will say if there's one thing out of all this I would take, I would say learn about naltrexone, because in the long run, other than, like I said, the substitution, there's a medication, and naloxone is the quick way that saves lives. But naltrexone actually allows it actually doesn't work as well for opiates. Actually, it's much better for alcohol and a few other addictions. But I'm just saying, learning the idea that we're constantly trying to find ways to make it so that life is a little easier when you've hit rock bottom, and it'll be a little smoother when you're climbing your way up. And you're always going to be able to find someone that can help you do it. I know we've said it. I know it's in our bump, but I mean it now more than I ever have before. You are not alone, and help is out there. Please.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the discussion that we were having with the mental health roundtable, the mental health Avengers, so to speak, that especially the folks from Guardians MH, they established a 501c3 specifically for that.
Yep.
Pop Psych 101 has the Facebook group that has folks looking for support. You know, our peers and other fellow podcasts do this. It's yeoman's work. And I mean, that work, God bless those people. You know, just the idea that just the strength that it takes. And it's funny because we have this show and we, I think, do a great job of reaching out to the community and doing our small part. And yet I look at Pop Psych 101, I look at Guardians MH, I look at some of our peers, and I look at what they're doing. And then I think, like, they're real heroes.
Yeah.
Like that's, I wish I had the time and the resources available to do even a tenth of that. You know, like that's what I wish I could aspire to do that. I wish I had the time and the resources available to do that. And maybe at some point in the future, if this continues and we can grow to do something like that. But in the meantime, I tip my hat to them and to anyone who is involved, whether it's counseling or what you do. And I say this all the time, like you tell me some of the stories and
without violating HIPAA.
Yes. Without violating HIPAA, obviously. But you tell me some of your stories and I just go, Jesus Christ, man. Like I'm in awe of you.
Oh, no.
On a regular basis.
No, we're not going there. We're not going there.
But my point is just that I'm in awe of you and everybody of your ilk, everybody who does that. It's, God bless you, man. Seriously. Because we need people like that. Because, you know, and again, I'm gonna make it personal. If somebody like you were around, maybe my aunt and uncle would still be here. I don't know. I don't know. I can't say that for certain, but maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
I hear
and
you.
That's why, you know, we need folks like that. So, man, this episode is just this is not a fun one at all. This is just dour. Thanks, Ariel, for just absolutely.
Hey. Do not knock our patrons. Oh, God.
I'm not. Ariel knows
Jesus.
This. No.
Oh, no.
I'm grateful to Ariel for the selection. I'm not knocking her. It was tongue in cheek. I have to have some sort of levity.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
Yeah, understood.
Gallows humor for some extent. So,
amen to that. Yeah. Okay.
So let's see what happens then when we get Roy Harper on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Mr. Harper. I'm Dr. Issues.
Hello. I'm Roy, and I'm...
Whoa. This isn't NA or AA. You don't have to start that way. I'm not here to beat you up about your past.
You don't have to. I already do enough of that. That's why I'm here.
Ooh. Let's start this on a positive note. I'm glad that you're here to address your problems in a mature way. From how you've initiated this, I can tell you're depressed.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. So fix it.
Not that simple, I'm afraid. You have more than one factor at play.
Well, you said I didn't need to start with the addiction, so that's one down. Next.
Whoa, what's the hurry?
How do you think I got the nickname Speedy? I don't waste time.
You know, that instant gratification is huge for you, but it's not realistic. How do you combat that?
You don't want to know.
Try me.
So, I guess we're not glossing over the addiction, huh? Just need to pigeonhole me as a junkie like everybody else.
No. That's the immature way. The mature way is to find out what's hurting you.
I'm a friggin' vigilante hero that gets punched, kicked, spit on, shot at, blasted on a regular basis, and you want to know what's hurting?
A little too literal there. Emotional pain is worse.
Got it, Doc. I'm depressed. You've made great headway. Fix it.
Roy, you're in pain. You're angry. You say you get it, but I actually don't. I'm not trying to waste your time. If you want me to keep fishing, I'll keep fishing. Or you could take charge and give me your hit list of items that contribute to your depression.
You know what? This is a bad idea. I got a sponsor. I can walk the path. I'm good. Maybe I'll call you if I need naltrexone to avoid cravings or something, but...
Whoa. I haven't seen someone react that scared in a long time.
Excuse me?
Something's scaring you. And I don't think it's your substance recovery. So I'm going to ask this a little differently. Why the pain?
You ever lose someone, Doc?
I mean, yeah, of course.
You ever lose your child?
No, I can't say I have. Not like that.
Then you don't know. You're useless. You can't shake that off. You can't chase a dragon to forget that. You can't drown the pain. You suffer.
Are you yelling at me or yourself?
What difference does it make? I couldn't do anything. All right. All the training in the world, all the love, all the random atrocities in society, and she didn't have a chance. She didn't get to be anything. What kind of planet is that, huh? You tell me, Mr. Smart Doctor. How do I fix something that already happened and I can't sleep at night because I see her dancing in my head? You tell me.
I get that you want to fix it. On one hand, I agree, but I think that may be the wrong angle. How do you honor her?
I'm not some woo-woo kind of guy. I'm not doing any of that Buddha yoga foundation stuff.
Okay, I didn't say it had to be any of that or religion or that's not what I'm getting at. Just day to day, how do you live your life? How do you put her smile onto others, man? You know?
That's creepy.
All right. You just an observation. You take things really literally. That's my fault. I'll change the description. You know what? Yeah, let's just jump into this, okay? Think of a happy memory of her. Picture it vividly.
No.
Okay.
No, because it's just going to go away.
No. I need some trust. Okay? This is action here. Please, just try. Please.
Okay.
Now picture her actually saying something positive about you.
Got it.
Now think of something you did, someone you saved, maybe a villain you defeated.
Okay.
All right. Now, immediately, go back to your daughter's image. Go back to the praise, all of it. Get it right back there.
Okay. I think I understand. How many times do I do this?
As many as it takes.
I don't have all day, Doc.
No. Not exactly. You have your whole life, Roy. Every good deed links to her praise. Every temptation that you avoid, it links to her smile. Couple good with good. It's the complete opposite end of the spectrum that you've been using. You know, it's different than what you're used to doing. Anytime you need it, it's right there.
You realize how ridiculous this sounds, right?
You wanted a fix, okay? I already told you. Nothing's quick. But at least all of this is under your control. And you don't need me there unless you want me to keep seeing you.
I won't go that far, but just what about knowing that she's not there? Is this really the next best thing?
Well, I mean, you can make it more tangible if you have a picture.
I do, but no, I can't go that far. Nobody can see me like that.
I can. Look, man, no shame. No shame. You know, I mean, this is grief, and you deserve to go through grief in a healthy way.
For somebody who never lost their daughter, you seem like you care.
That's one of the reasons why I'm here.
That was not easy for either of us.
Nope.
Yeah. Again, I said, sorry, folks, if you were expecting something light and fun. I know we do that a lot on this show, and I don't want to say we ever make light of the issues that we deal with, but we try and do it in a way that I don't know. It's funny because I can't say that I don't want to make light of anything. I'm not trying to trivialize it. We don't always get caught into the raw emotions of it. This one, for whatever reason, it became very real.
Yeah.
For both of us. And
yeah.
And I'm sure you heard that. And I hope that you felt it. And I said it on the mental health roundtable. I said, you know, if we can impact one person with this show, if we can help one person with this show. And I think it's those real moments, stuff like this, that keeps me coming back. Not that I would, walk away, but you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no question about it. And what I was doing there, that's not, I will say there's one part that really is not realistic. That type of linking, that visualization technique, that's not how that works. That's not it's not supposed to be in that rapid time or anything like that. The gestalt of it is definitely there. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh yeah, it's just that easy. Of course not. But I thought it was just a good example of, even when you think there's nothing you can do, you can always find an angle. You can always find a way to try and connect with someone, even if they aren't expecting it. That's the way I have to go into work every day. And that's the way I'll continue to go into work every day until I decide that I'm either incapable or incompetent to do such a job. But no,
I don't know that you'll ever be incompetent to do that job.
Well, listening to people and at least acknowledging their pain, I think I can do that forever. I really do. I hope I can.
I hope you can too, and this world hopes you can. So, on that note, for those of you who enjoyed the Mental Health Avengers, so to speak, the round table, the sipping pop while guarding your popcorn on the couch, whatever term we want to go by it, you use.
Oh my God, that is great.
Well, because we had to. That's right. Yeah, because
I know
you weren't in on it. That was the term we came up with I came up with to utilize all 5 shows.
Oh man,
we will be doing that again, and it's going to be a semi-regular thing, and we are going to have more guest appearances from various folks on those shows. Obviously, we've already done Popcorn Psych. We are going to be coordinating with with Pop Psych 101. We're going to coordinate with Freudian Sips. I would love to just chat with Anna and Bonnie. I think they're a hoot and a half. And I know Doc still has to coordinate with Dr. Goku.
Yeah.
You do need to get on that.
Yes, I know. Yes.
I will loan you the equipment so you can broadcast from your house. You can do it there.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. The next regular episode, I still have to talk to a couple of our patrons. I know that Ruby has requested Ghost Rider, either as a concept or Robbie Reyes. So we may have an episode or two in between there, because I know we just did Hawkeye for Ruby. So I want to give some of our other patrons a chance. But I reached out to all of them, and none of them got back to me yet. So failing anything else, we're going to be doing Ghost Rider next, but so stay tuned for that. And I know at the end of our New York Comic-Con, the second half, I said we were penciling in for our first live appearance at Rogue Comics in Cranford, New Jersey. We are confirmed. You can lock it into your calendars, November 13th at 6:30, 7 p.m. I wanted to start recording this at 6:30, and then Doc unfortunately couldn't make it up here until about 7. So we'll say 6:30, 7 o'clock, but that will be confirmed at Rogue Comics in Cranford, New Jersey. We will post on our social media pages and on our website, and you can come out and meet myself and Doc. You can ask questions. We will find some way to incorporate folks into the skit. And we will have some swag giveaways. We got a t-shirt. We've got some notebooks. We have some leftover stuff from New York Comic-Con that we did not give away. So we're looking forward to meeting the fans and chatting with all of you. And you can come out and maybe we'll sign something. I don't know. I don't really do autographs, but if you're that interested, I'll sign it.
You don't want a doctor's autograph, just saying.
Yeah, it's not really that legible. Then again, neither is mine. So, just saying.
Yeah, sorry you have to wait so long, but you have to have patience because Doc has patience.
Get out.
Okay, bye.
So I mean, is there anything else we can say? I don't really. No, we're good. So thank you so much for listening. And real fast, because I completely forgot. You can find all of our shows on our website, capesonthecouch.live. I completely forgot to do the end of the thing recap. We're on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Capes on the Couch. You can email us, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. You want to hear the full uncensored version of the skits. You want to hear additional material. You want to hear more of the interviews that we had on at New York Comic-Con from Chris Claremont and Gail Simone. Go to our Patreon page, patreon.com/capesonthecouch. You want that swag? You can go to our TeePublic page. Those links are on our websites as well. And we've got a Discord server as well. And I know Ruby has been in the Discord server and she's been listening to this. You can listen to us as we stream our episodes and we record them live, and you can interact with the rest of our fans and the rest of our shows or other shows that we like to talk to, like Kate from Ignorance Was Bliss. And I will be doing a guest spot on that show coming up very soon. And I just recorded a guest spot on Parent Quest. So spreading the love and spreading the wealth and going on other shows. So stay tuned to our social media pages on our website, and you can find out more about that. So I think that finally, officially, formally about does it. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.